Hey everybody, welcome to Bike Revs. I'm Mark. Now I don't know about you guys, but I will never fail to be impressed by somebody who can pull a wheelie. And I don't care if it's a kid on a push bike, somebody on a high-end motocross, or somebody just on a sports bike going past. If you're pulling a wheelie, I'm going to watch it and give you a round of applause at the end. I think it's a fantastic demonstration of absolute supreme control over your motorbike. Now to some people, of course, it's childish behaviour, it shouldn't be encouraged, and it definitely has no place on the road, and they've got a good point. But what I would say to that is, if you're going to claim to be a good rider or an advanced rider, then you should have control over your motorbike in every direction, by which I mean forwards and back, left and right, and up and down. Well, on that contentious thought, several years ago, probably about 3.5 years ago now, I decided that I wanted to try and pull a wheelie on my bike. The bike I had at the time was the Z900. So I set about learning how to do that. After all, I didn't want my first wheelie to be a mistake. So off I went, did lots of research on YouTube and so on, as I say, and then I went out there and started to try and do second gear clutch up wheelies. And the technique that I was taught by the internet and by several friends of mine who can do this sort of thing was to get the bike up to about 20 miles an hour, second gear, and then 2 fingers on the clutch, give it just enough to slip the clutch, not to completely disengage it. And as you do that, you rev the engine. So it's kind of this action. And all people kept telling me was, it's just this. Well, sounds easy, doesn't it? So I started to put that into practice, and sure enough, I could pretty much pull a wheelie about that high on the old Z900 anytime I liked, but I wanted more. And then when my mate Adam from Sweet Triple said to me, hey, I'm booked into Next Level Wheelie School, I jumped at the chance and booked a place with him. So off we went, and I was full of expectation that all I was going to do was take all my second gear clutch up skills that I've already learnt from the internet and apply them and do some next level stuff and really start to get those wheelies up in the air. And it was just more a case of polishing off the skills that I'd already learnt. Well, how wrong could I have been? So let's go and have a look at how that day ended up then. Well, we all arrived at South Cerney Airfield, which was the location for our training. Some of us on these lovely bikes, and some people arrived in cars, some people brought spectators, and we came in a variety of kit. A few of us had textile jackets, jeans and comfortable boots. Other guys were in full leather racing suits. But it didn't seem to matter as long as you were wearing proper bike gear. So here we are at the tent. The tent was fabulous. It gave you all the facilities that you needed, with as much tea, coffee, cold drinks and chocolate as you could manage. So thanks to the guys for a fantastic setup. Now the bikes themselves were ZX6Rs. I think these were about 20 years old from what they were telling us. Are slightly modified in that they've removed all unnecessary speedos, lights and stuff like that from the front end, and they're permanently in second gear. So we got onto the bikes. We were split up into 3 sets of 4, and the first set came up and were given the usual sort of safety briefs as you would expect, and they run through exactly how to do a second gear clutch up wheelie. Now I've got to tell you guys, everything I explained earlier in the video that I'd learnt off the internet suddenly went out of the window because they taught us a whole new technique for doing second gear clutch up wheelies. Now I'm not going to spoil this too much, but you start off at the first set of cones, you then hit the second set of cones, start to accelerate. You should be at half to 3/4 throttle at the third set of cones, at which point you dab the clutch very slightly and the front wheel goes effortlessly up into the air. Now when I pulled wheelies before using my technique, it's always been a little bit hit and miss and rather kind of aggressive, but this technique they were teaching us was a revelation. It gently lifted the front wheel into the air. You could hold it for a second or two and then just gently lower it down, not like I've done previously on my bike where you kind of get thrown quite aggressively up in the air and the whole thing's a little bit scary. This, by comparison, was absolutely fantastic. So we did our first session, our group of 4, and goodness knows how many runs we got in, but it was about 15 or 20 minutes, and we were practicing the techniques they were teaching us. They were telling us what we were doing wrong with the clutch and the acceleration and so on. And that was all good. Nothing really too spectacular in there, just a couple of little pop-up wheelies. So we finished our first session, hands shaking with adrenaline, and then we got to watch the others do theirs, and we could see the mistakes that they were making, which generally speaking was not enough throttle and too much clutch. So then we went back into the second session armed with this new knowledge, and we started to smash out a few little wheelies, and it was getting pretty good on that second session. Again, another 15-20 minutes. Another time to reflect while the other groups went through, and then the last session before lunch, the third session. And I've got to say, a few of the guys at that point were really starting to smash it. So my mate Ali, who's another one of the guys that went with me, just looked at me and he said, "You know what, Mark, we just need to give it some beans." And he went out there and he properly hit it, and he was throwing that front wheel up into the air. It was fantastic. Now luckily these bikes do have a thing on the back of them that cuts the power if you wheelie too much, and they explained all that in the safety sessions. So he was never in any danger, but certainly really went for it, and that was great to see. He even got a round of applause when he came back from the other guys. So after each of the groups had done 3 runs each, it was time to break for lunch, and we had to take our own lunch with us. So whilst I stood there with my cheese and ham sandwiches, the instructors came out and gave us a demonstration of what they could do. So the guy you're watching at the moment is a chap called Paul, and if you've gone to Next Level Wheelie's excellent website, it will tell you all about Paul and his fellow instructors. But essentially he was like a top 10 UK stunt rider for some years, and it was as if he was on strings, or at least defying the laws of physics. I just don't understand how you can get that good at riding a motorbike. And to be honest, it's worth being on the course just for the lunch break so that you can watch this show. Now, as I continued to watch Paul pirouette his motorcycle around, it was time for a bit of inner reflection on how well I was doing after the morning session. I was actually quite disappointed with myself. As I said, I was expecting to be throwing this bike around, just honing the skills that I already had, but I wasn't doing as well as I had been on my own bike at this point. And so I was looking forward to the afternoon session just to get back up there, but already some of the other guys, as I've mentioned, were absolutely nailing the wheelies even before lunch, so I had quite a bit of catching up to do. Well, back to it, and we took some waking up after a few dismal runs, but it soon begins to click with a few of the guys, and now we're seeing some stonking wheelies. Well, not so much me. I'm still just popping the front wheel up, but not like the others, and this is getting frustrating. I mean, really frustrating. I know what to do, but I just can't seem to do it. Same again for the penultimate session, and either I'm barely raising the wheel or getting it up high and throwing it straight back down instead of holding it. Then the 6th and last session, and now it's really starting to go off with some of the guys hooning up the old runway like a group of pro stuntmen, and now I'm clearly bottom of the class and ready to sit the last few out, if I'm honest. Okay, I stuck with it, but I was getting really cheesed off. Not with the instructors or the course or anyone else, just with myself. Conversely, my mate Adam from Sweet Triple then gets his final run in and absolutely nails this stonker. Right, this is a guy who's never done a wheelie before and leaves the course with that one under his belt, so well done mate, 10 out of 10 for that one. Now as a quick debrief, I reckon 10 out of the 12 of us fully achieved everything they wanted to, and more. It was just 1 or 2 of us, for whatever reason, that just didn't quite hit it in the same way as the others. Perhaps for me I went with the wrong attitude, or maybe I'm getting frail in my 50s and the self-preservation was too strong. I don't know. It's something I need to think about. So I have to answer a few questions. Would I recommend it? Well, hell yes, 10 times over. It was an amazing experience. The kit, the setup, the people, the bikes and the location were all top notch. For 250 quid, you won't get a better day out on your bike. Now, did I enjoy it? Well, yes and no, only because I felt that I'd let myself down a little bit, and I'm really not used to being bottom of the class. But on reflection, yes, it was one heck of a day, and even people who don't ride bikes want to know about it, which is a very rare thing. Now, am I going to go back? Well, I think so. I have something to prove to myself. Ideally, I'd like to practice getting confident with my front wheel in the air, and I'm not so sure that I want to do that on my own new bike. So it's going to be a challenge to get myself into a place where I can turn up with the confidence that I'll be able to hold my own, but I definitely want to. Now, do I think this training is going to help me be a better rider outside of wheelie school? Well, I think so. You see, these bikes were quite special, and I certainly can't apply the same technique to my 1200 speed triple. You see, at 6,000 RPM, second gear, with the throttle sort of half open, I'm doing nearly 70 miles an hour, and that's just a little bit too much. I have, however, been testing to see where I can power wheelie, so about 5,500 RPM in first, open the throttle briskly, and the front wheel comes up a treat. Second gear requires more revs, and so on. So what this training has made me do is to think more about the relationship between RPM, speed, which gear to be in, and how the bike behaves through its power curves in ways that I hadn't really previously considered. So yes, I think that makes me a slightly better rider, and with a better understanding of my bike, and if the front wheel does happen to lift up, then I know exactly what to do instead of freaking out. So that's me, that's my story of wheelies so far. It can only get better from here, so thanks for watching. Get yourself signed up to Next Level Wheelie School if you're over here in the UK. It's honestly worth it for your skills and perhaps for a bit of self-enlightenment. Well, keep your chain oiled and I'll see you soon.